Imagine a world where your life savings can't buy a loaf of bread, where you burn cash for warmth because it's cheaper than firewood. This isn't a dystopian movie. It's a historical reality that has repeated itself over and over again. This is the story of hyperinflation, the day money dies. Our journey begins in a surprisingly beautiful place, the Netherlands, 1637. The air is electric, not with war or politics, but with flowers, tulips. This is the insane true story of tulip mania, the world's first recorded stock market bubble and crash. Not just any tulips, but rare, exotic bulbs that became the ultimate status symbol. A single bulb, like the legendary Semper Augustus, was worth more than a grand house on an Amsterdam canal. Merchants, swept up in the frenzy, sold their farms, their homes, even their ships, all to speculate on these delicate flowers. It was a market built on pure belief. Then, in one cold week in February, that belief vanished. The market didn't just crash, it evaporated. Fortunes were wiped out overnight. This was tulip mania, the world's first recorded economic bubble, and a chilling preview of what happens when value becomes detached from reality. Fast forward almost 3 centuries to 1923, Weimar Germany. The nation is on its knees, crushed by the weight of reparations after losing World War I. Faced with an impossible bill, the government makes a fateful decision. It turns on the printing presses, and it doesn't stop. Day and night, the machines churn out marks, flooding the country with paper that is losing value by the hour. The numbers are staggering, almost incomprehensible. A loaf of bread that cost 250 marks in January soared to 200 billion marks by November. Think about that. Your daily bread costs billions. Life savings became worthless pocket change. Children, in a surreal twist, were seen playing in the streets, building castles, not with toy blocks, but with stacks of cash. It was literally cheaper than buying toys. People stopped using wallets and started using wheelbarrows to carry their money. Shopkeepers couldn't update their prices fast enough. And when winter came, families huddled around their stoves, feeding the flames not with logs, but with bundles of banknotes. The money had become so worthless that its value as fuel was greater than its value as currency. This remains one of the most terrifying examples of hyperinflation ever recorded, a complete societal breakdown triggered by a printing press. But this isn't just an old European story. In the 1980s, the fire of hyperinflation swept across Latin America. It didn't start with a spark. It erupted like a financial wildfire, a continent caught in a rising fever, where money burned faster than time. Hyperinflation ignited across the continent, spreading from city to city like a rising fire. Entire economies began to overheat. Argentina, Brazil, Peru, all were caught in its grip, with inflation rates hitting a staggering 1,000 to 10,000%. Life became a frantic race against time. The moment you got paid, you ran. Every minute became a gamble, every hour more expensive. Time accelerated beyond control, and life slipped into You ran to the nearest store to buy anything you could: food, supplies, goods, because you knew that by tomorrow, or even in a few hours, your money would be worth significantly less. Prices didn't just rise weekly. They could double in a matter of days. The constant gnawing anxiety of watching your purchasing power dissolve before your eyes became a part of daily life for millions. Then came the turn of the new millennium. In 2008, Zimbabwe entered the Hyperinflation Hall of Fame. Under Robert Mugabe's rule, the government's answer to every economic problem was to print more money. The result was an economic death spiral of epic proportions. The numbers defy imagination. Official inflation peaked at 89.76 trillion %. That's 89 followed by 21 zeros. The government issued banknotes with absurd denominations, culminating in a 100 trillion Zimbabwe dollar note. You could be a trillionaire and still not be able to afford a bus ticket or a loaf of bread. The currency became so cumbersome and valueless that people stopped counting it and started weighing it on scales. Eventually, citizens did the only logical thing left to do. They abandoned the Zimbabwe dollar entirely, turning to foreign currencies like the US dollar or South African rand, or simply resorting to barter. The national currency was dead. More recently, the tragedy unfolded in Venezuela. Just a few decades ago, Venezuela was the richest country in South America, floating on a sea of oil. But a combination of economic mismanagement, political instability, and a collapse in oil prices led the government of Nicolas Maduro down the same ruinous path. A nation once fueled by oil prosperity watched its foundations begin to break. The engines of growth slowed and instability began to spread. The printing presses were unleashed, and price controls were imposed by decree, creating massive distortions in the economy. By 2018, inflation had rocketed past 1,000,000%. The scenes were heartbreakingly familiar. People carrying backpacks and sacks overflowing with near-worthless believers just to buy a few basic groceries. Supermarket shelves stood eerily empty. The social fabric tore apart, faced with starvation and a complete collapse of public services. An estimated 7 million Venezuelans fled their homeland, many on foot, creating the largest refugee crisis in the modern history of the Americas.
2020-2025, Turkey. Money supply grew 5 times in 5 years. Official inflation 33%, but real life over 100%.
And the story isn't over. Look at Turkey today. Between 2020 and 2025, the country's money supply has grown 5-fold. Rapid expansion flooded the economy with excess liquidity. Prices began rising faster than official data suggested. The real inflation was already taking shape. While official statistics report inflation around 38%, anyone living there will tell you the real-life cost of living has skyrocketed by over 100%. The price of a simple loaf of bread has jumped from 3 lira to 10 lira in just a few years. Middle-class families are forced to sell precious wedding gold, family heirlooms, just to pay their monthly bills. Household budgets were stretched beyond their limits. Saving became nearly impossible under rising costs. Economic pressure reshaped daily life across the country. A turning point was approaching, and a generation of young, educated Turks, seeing no future in their own country, are leaving in droves, creating a devastating brain drain. Do you see the pattern? Every single time, the story is the same. A government, often desperate or irresponsible, prints too much money, too fast. At first, it seems like an easy solution. But as the flood of new money chases the same amount of goods and services, prices begin to rise. People notice. Trust begins to fray. They start spending their money as quickly as they get it, which only speeds up the process. It's a vicious cycle. Trust collapses, prices explode, and then society itself begins to break. This isn't a modern phenomenon. When people stop believing in money, money stops working. The Roman Empire did it by debasing its silver coins, mixing them with cheaper metals, until they were virtually worthless. The French Revolution tried to fund itself by printing paper money called assignats, which quickly became confetti. During the American Civil War, the Confederate States printed graybacks until they were utterly valueless. The outcome is always the same. Now, let's bring it to the present day. Since 2020, central banks around the world, in response to the pandemic and economic slowdowns, have printed trillions upon trillions of dollars, euros, and yen. Global debt is at an all-time high. Interest rates are rising in an attempt to tame inflation, but the mountain of debt makes that a perilous balancing act. History, as Mark Twain supposedly said, doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. We've seen the rhyme, again and again. The question is no longer if this can happen again. The question is, who is next?
Who is next?
Because the lesson, etched into the tombstones of fallen currencies throughout history, is simple and unforgiving. When trust dies, money dies. Thanks for watching. If you found this history insightful, please like this video and subscribe for more content that makes you think. See you next time.